Hey, everybody, this is Chris, and I just want to take a few minutes here to tell my family story. And I'm getting around to this a little bit later than I wanted to, but such is life. And I guess I'll explain a little bit why here in a little bit. Um, I want to talk about my family's experience with COVID-19. Not because my only agenda in this video is just to give the facts. Just the facts. I don't have an agenda to say yay or nay to any particular narrative that the media is giving us, other than to just be aware that the media is giving us a narrative. I'm not putting any judgments on what that narrative is, but I just want to share again. I have no proof because I have not been tested, and I've opted not to take the test simply because everything that I've heard said that the tests are kind of 50-50 in their results of accuracy. Um, I have suspicions to believe that myself and 6 of my children had COVID or something like COVID back in December. The doctor did not know what it was. It was not the flu, but they didn't know what to test for it. My kids had marginal symptoms. I got it the worst. Mine turned into full-fledged pneumonia. I was down and out for about 3 weeks, but I was treated with azithromycin and a cough syrup with codeine and just like one other thing. I don't remember what it was. I think it was like just a really high strength ibuprofen or Tylenol or something like that. But I got over it, even though even into January, I still felt fatigue. Into February, I was starting to just really kind of feel a little bit more 100%. Although I had kind of a different symptom than what I had read about. At least I'd read far fewer people having a symptom like this. I felt like my arms and across my chest, like everything around here, like I had a mild sunburn of some type. It wasn't really painful, but it was just that feeling of like you'd been out in the sun just a little bit too long. And that overall feeling remained in my body until about April. And then it finally left in April, maybe the beginning of May. Um, Now, so that was me, and 6 of my kids also had varying symptoms. Some very, very mild, some a little bit more. Fevers, coughs. Um, and again, we went to the doctor, and he said, yeah, we don't know what this is, but it's not the flu, and we've been seeing a lot of it. So myself, 6 of my kids, and then um, also 2 people in my house that did not have any symptoms or did not seem to get sick during this time were my wife and our newborn baby. Fast forward to just 3 weeks ago, my wife started feeling ill. Um, she, I don't know, she periodically just kind of goes through these times where she gets headaches, anyways. And when she gets colds, she tends to get them pretty bad. And so she wasn't experiencing anything out of the norm for most of the time, but about 8.5 days in, she realized that she couldn't smell anything and she couldn't taste anything. So she decided, well, nobody else is sick, and I haven't even really been around anybody else. I guess just to rule it out, I'll go tested for COVID. And she did. And 2 days later, we got a call back. She got a call back saying that she was positive. Now, this is about 12 days in at this point. So So she was positive. We don't know for certain if like the baby was, she was kind of feverish, but that could be teething, that could be cold, whatever. We didn't have the baby tested, but the baby was grumpy and a little bit feverish during this time also, but only for a few days. Meanwhile, um, I had been tested just before any of this happened because I was going to have surgery, and that test came back negative. And then after she was tested and found positive, the Department of Health insisted that I go get tested again. So I went and got tested. And now this is having been with her the whole time. We have 9 of us that live in a little 1,200 square foot house. There is little privacy. There is no such thing as quarantining. Um, like, we are in each other's spaces all the time. I was still sleeping next to my wife, still kissing her every morning as I left the house, giving her a hug and a kiss when I got home every night. Um, there was no distancing going on. And then, even within my own practices, generally when I'm out in public, I'm keeping my distance largely from people as it is. If a store requires the wearing of a mask, I will wear a mask. But it's not something that, well, I'll get to what to why that is in just a minute. But anyway, so I was tested again after full blown exposure. In fact, I wasn't trying to be cavalier about it, but the day that she the day that she got her results back and she told us, okay, I'm positive, my first response was, I said, oh, give me a big fat kiss. And so I did that. I didn't dodge the bullet. I didn't try to go around it. I wasn't afraid of it. I wasn't any of that. I gave her a big kiss. I still slept in bed with her. I took care of her. I helped take care of her. Um, and then we decided, just as a precaution, because I called and asked about getting all of our kids tested also. And they suggested that for children under 5 that it might be too traumatic. So we didn't have the younger 3 kids get tested, but we did have the older ones tested, the 16-year-old, 14, 11, and 7-year-old. And they all also came back negative. Negative. Not only no symptoms, but also negative on the test. Now, there is a possibility that it was a false negative, but a negative is a negative. We had no symptoms. And then on top of that, we have had nobody in this time around us come back to us to tell us that, hey, be careful. I tested positive. As far as like beforehand or even after, during the initial stages of contagion. And then also after that, even people that we were exposed to, people that I reached out to say, whoa, hey, hang on, just want you to be aware. My wife tested positive. I was around you. I tested negative, but I just want you to know, so that you can watch out for yourself. Nobody has reported back to us that they have been positive for COVID. Now, this is what I'm wanting to communicate. Let me say what I'm not wanting to communicate. I am not wanting to communicate that I want to jump into this conversation to try to prove a particular point, to say that I'm anti-media, or to say that I'm anti healthcare reports, or anything like that. I'm not. I am really trying to just. When this thing first broke out, I was following it as closely as I could, but honestly, in the last probably 2-3 weeks, I have really stepped away from where I'm. if and when I have watched the news, it has just been to just kind of generally get a sense of what's going on in the world, just to see like, okay, what are they reporting now? Just so that I can be aware, but I'm not watching for like how to educate myself. Largely because the narrative and the directions for all of this have changed the way that they have. Now, I understand why they have changed the way that they have. Okay. So hear me out on this. I'm not anti pharmacy. I'm not anti, like, I'm trying not to be anti anything. The people that want to be critical and say, well, they don't know what they're talking about. They're always changing their mind, this and that. Blah. Well, this is a thing. I mean, like, nobody can deny that people have gotten really sick and that it has been really bad for a lot of people. That is a reality, and don't try to ignore that. But let's look at reality. Reality is that if this is a real thing, which it is, and if this is as new as it is, which it seems to be, then like anything else, it takes time to learn about it. And so that's partly why I did not get tested for antibodies, because my doctor, who I trust, he's a very level headed guy, very practical, cautious, but practical. He said, it's sometimes they're accurate, sometimes they're not, as far as testing for the antibodies to see if you've had them. And he said, so, because of that, I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you go get the test. Um, Now, if you think about it more and you decide that you really want to, then let me know. You don't even have to call back and talk to me. I'll just, um, let my nurse know, and I'll get the order put in for you. We'll get you tested and see what it says. But one of the things that he and I agreed on is that even if I tested positive for antibodies, even if anybody tests positive for antibodies, it's still early enough in any of these test trials that they don't have any long-term data to show whether these antibodies are something that we would have short-term, or something that our bodies build up for the season to deal with what we have right now, or whether it's going to be long-term. In other words, let's say they take all the people that have been tested, like they know they were confirmed COVID cases, and then they go back and test them later. They have the antibodies, but they just got over it a month ago, so now they have the antibodies, and it'd be one thing if they could test them now in May. Well, I mean, like a month ago in May, and they say, "Yep, you have antibodies." Come back in June. So they come back in June, they get tested again, they still have antibodies, and it's still like as many, or however they gauge that. And then they come back in July and say yes. So like there's 3 months of consistent data to show that they at least have the antibodies for 3 months. Then into month 4, August, they get tested again, and they show that either yes, you still have them, or no, you don't. Oh, okay, well, there's a variable that can help determine whether having the antibodies is a short-term or a long-term thing. They just don't have the data. So that's like, that's not being anti-media, that's just being level-headed about how data is collected. I mean, that's just practical. Um, Even testing experiments to come up with a hypothesis in science is that's how it's done, and we just don't have the ability to do that yet, or at least, I mean, I don't know. Just from where I sit, we're not at that place. But what I'm saying is that the media has said that this is a hyper contagious thing. And so wear masks, social distance, all this other stuff. That's what the media says. I'm not saying that the media is wrong. What I'm saying is that in my family's case, we were directly in the face of it, living with it, and lived through it without getting it. Now, the doctors keep telling me that we did not have COVID back in December. So I'm gonna buy their narrative. I'm gonna say, even though they didn't know what it was called, they told me that they gave this thing that was going around in November and December this name of that they later came to call it the killer cold, because it wasn't quite the flu and it wasn't COVID, but it was nasty. And it was producing a lot of cases of pneumonia and ear infections and things like that. Even my doctor and some of his staff had it. They said, yeah, we even had this thing back then, but we don't believe that it was COVID. Um, I don't know if they've been tested for the antibodies for COVID or not, but let's just assume that that's true. My family was exposed firsthand, and we did not get it. Um, my experience would lend itself to say that just, and again, I'm not trying to project this as like I am right, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm just a guy with an experience, and my experience is different than other people out there. Some people out there say, um, I did everything I could to not get it, and I ended up getting it. And some people on the flip side are saying, I didn't do anything to protect myself, and I did not get it. Um, in our case, we did not get it, and we were in the face of it. My opinion, my opinion is that I think time is going to show that even though the reality, like I said before, is that people have gotten this, people have gotten it in really nasty ways, people have died. The actual death rate and number is way lower than what they ever said that it really was. We know, even from what the experts have told us, that many deaths within those numbers were classified COVID, blamed on COVID, labeled COVID, when they really were probably something else. Heart failure, pneumonia, um, congestive lung failure. I mean, whatever it is, that like if they died with COVID, it was labeled COVID. They died with COVID, not of or from COVID. Um, I don't think this is something to be that. I mean, like, I want to be careful how to frame this. When people found out that my wife had COVID, some of their first responses was, "Oh my goodness, how scary!" And the reality was, for us, it was not scary. It was not scary. I'm not saying that that's the case for everybody else. Everyone else has their own story. But it appears to me that um, whoever is going to get it will get it. And they will get it when they get it, irrespective of when they think they're exposed or when they think they're most vulnerable. If they're going to get it, they're going to get it, and they're going to get it to the extent that their body responds to whatever they get. And if they don't get it, they don't get it. Because, I mean, think about even the social distancing guidelines about, limiting a certain number of people into a room. That's great if nobody has if nobody's carrying it. Let's say only 10 people are allowed in, and 5 of them are carrying it and they don't know it, or 7 of them are carrying it and they don't know it. Logistically, the odds would then be higher. But then again, if it's really as terribly contagious as they said, then really it would only take 1 or 2 people of those 10 to transmit it. But then on the other side, the World Health Organization or the CDC recently then said that, well, okay, well, maybe it's people that are not asymptomatic, or people that are asymptomatic may not be as likely to carry. And I don't know. We don't know. But I'm just saying overall that it was not scary for us. We were exposed. 7 of us did not get it. And we are still healthy. We are still negative. And that's that. So that's the first part of what I want to say. Second thing, I apologize. I'm all washed out in this video. And that's because I'm using just really kind of poor technology. And I'm using poor technology because I am also just choosing to withdraw a lot from Facebook these days. And that's just because A, all of the COVID stuff going around, B, all of the social reaction stuff that's going on with the protests and riots and everything all around. Those things in and of themselves are just producing so much social angst and anger and ugliness online that I just don't want to be a part of it. I don't have, I mean, if and this happens almost any time I jump onto Facebook, if I spend longer than 10 minutes just kind of scrolling to see what people are talking about, invariably I walk away regretting that I got on. Just because it's so nasty. People that I love and care for, that unfortunately I don't really feel like I could have conversations with them, intelligent, meaningful conversations, because things are just so nasty. And I love you, but I'm sorry. Like some of you, I just don't want to talk to you the way you're responding to people. And so, for the sake of both of us, I'm just not getting engaged. And I'm not, even with this, if you comment on this and your comments are nasty, I'm gonna delete them, because I can. Facebook can censor everything else, so I can censor negativity on my posts, and I will. And so I still love you, but I mean, come on, let's be adults. So, but I'm also finding that by spending less time on social media, that I am productive in so many other ways. I'm less stressed. My battery life on my phone and my laptop lasts a lot longer. I'm not getting worked up emotionally unnecessarily the way that I was before. And more than anything, I'm free. We often we worship what we spend the most time thinking about. And if we're spending most of our time just poring over Facebook and poring over YouTube and poring over news headlines and stuff like that, in a sense we kind of end up worshiping that. And I've had a verse from one of Paul's letters to Timothy just kind of go through my head throughout this process, and that's where he says that endure hardship as a good soldier of the Lord Jesus Christ, because no enlisted soldier entangles him in the affairs of civilian life. In a lot of ways, I feel like civilian life is Facebook, is regular news media, is like all the other stuff that we get entangled in. And I don't want to be entangled. I want to be free. I want my mind to be free. I want my heart to be free. And as a result, I feel like I have that much more freedom. I can live life feeling free. So with that, the church that I pastor, we are meeting, we are open, and we encourage people, don't be afraid. Go back to church, go back to fellowship. I'm just going to speak personally here. There are many believers out there that are still making excuses by saying, well, it's okay for them to go to the grocery store, and it's okay for them to go to Walmart and all these other places that are like that everybody just treats so commonly, but yet they're afraid to go to church. And that's crazy. Like for people to say, and this is not condemnation, please hear my heart on this, but like it's so contradictory to say like, yeah, I believe in God, I trust God, he's my healer, he's my provider, he's all my, oh, but like, well, I mean, but not really. I mean, like, I don't really want to put things to the test like that. I don't want to make him have to be my healer. I don't want to make him have to be, and nobody's trying to make God have to be something. But if we're not living in fear, and if we really trust God to be who he is, and if you can still go back to church and take whatever precautions that you feel are rational and in line with your conscience in these times. But don't let it be an excuse, because if you are out of fellowship because of all this, cut your hand off. Cut your hand off and leave it on the dinner table and see how long it survives. And it's the same thing. When you become unplugged, whether it's a formal church or whether it's a home fellowship group or whatever, if you're using the circumstances of today as an excuse to disconnect your fellowship with other people, you, in a sense, Jesus said, whoever endures to the end will be saved. You are not enduring very well. And if you're not able to endure this, imagine if and when real hard times come. And you would have to make decisions that are much harder than the decisions that we are faced with today. So, anyways, I made a couple notes here to make sure that I touched on everything that I wanted to. And as usual, this is longer than I thought it would be. But hey, it's under 30 minutes. So, again, this is not to stir up arguments. This is not to stir up contention or fighting, but just to let everybody know that my family lived through it. And we were okay. And God is faithful, and you will be okay too. Most of you will be okay. And even especially for the believer, even if you did get sick with anything, even if your sickness was unto death, if you are really a child of God, what do you have to fear? The Apostle Paul said to live is Christ and to die is gain. So what do we have to fear? What do we have to be afraid of? So so just lastly, like, anybody sending me conspiracy videos, I'm not watching them. Anybody sending me, like articles on, hey, check this out, this was my horrible COVID story, or this is what the doctors aren't telling you, and blah, blah, I'm not reading them. I'm not. I don't have time for the extra conspiracy stuff. I love you. If that's how you want to spend your time, that's fine. You have to give an account for that time at the end of your life. And you got to ask yourself in the meantime, like, is it really benefiting anybody? Is it really helping anybody? So I can tell you, some of you post so much negative stuff that like people aren't even paying attention anymore. So just keep that in mind. And, I'm not going to name any names, but, if you figure out that it's you, then do something about it. So anyways, I love you. My family loves you. Our church family here at the Dwelling Place in Clarion, Iowa, we love you. And so thank you for taking these 30 minutes and listening to me. So hopefully, I'm going to put this on YouTube so that you can even use the settings button to listen to it at a faster speed so that it doesn't take 30 minutes for you to listen to it. So anyways, God bless you. I love you. And the Lord be with you. And we'll see y'all later.